Welcome back to the broadcast, and crossing over straight to the discussion because of the interest of time. Today will not be taking a look at the newspapers with CPA, but technically all the stories that we're addressing today, or maybe the two stories that we'll be talking about today, are stories that are well also highlighted on the newspapers. The biggest story on the xenophobic attacks that we've witnessed, and the rest of the world, Africa itself, has come out to castigate what is ongoing in South Africa. But before we come to that, let's take a look at a discussion that we've had before on the standstill that we're witnessing at the level of the county. And now the latest is that, the chief of counties, that is the chair of county of governors, that is Wycliffe Oparanya, coming out to say that they might be forced to now wake up and push for a referendum that is going to address the issues of devolution and ensure that devolution is a success. What way forward for the people of Kenya and for devolution as it stands today when we get such threats, and when we know very well that we're supposed to go back to the Supreme Court and nothing has been achieved so far, or nothing has been addressed so far, and there are likelihoods that this date, that is the 16th, that has been set by the governors, is going to come before they get that truce?
Thank you so much, Linda. And it's still sad that 3 months after we started the financial year 2019-2020, these issues have not been sorted out. And when you look at the figures that the governors, of course, through the Senate are pushing for, what CRA advised should be the right figure, and what the National Assembly is sticking to, of course, the National Assembly being the representative of the government per se, is that it's just a small amount that we're arguing over, because the governors are pushing for 335 billion.
Right.
The National Assembly is still sticking with 310 or 316, whichever figure. But you still wonder why the national government is so comfortable seeing counties crash. Because some of the employees have never been paid their salaries for July and August now that just ended. And we don't know what will happen this month, because funds have not hit the counties yet. And the Attorney General came out clearly and said, look, we cannot send money to the counties unless we have the legal backing, and that is the Division of Revenue Bill. So we still don't know what will happen. I still get surprised that the President and the Deputy President have not come out strongly to talk to their party MPs, so that they can be able to back down on that hardline stand and see how they can be able to reach a consensus. Because this is an issue that now has to be handled politically. And by that, it means that the Jubilee government, which has the majority in parliament, should be able to whip the MPs and find a long-lasting solution. Because if we fail as a country, if devolution fails, the people will be blamed is the president and the deputy president, and by extent, the government, which is the Jubilee government. So they have to do what they can be able to do to ensure that we don't get to where we are looking at on the September 16th. But probably nothing will have been done by that time, and I can tell you we'll see strikes across the country.
Sadly
if that happens.
Proceeds. Okay, well, we always argue that we're last minute people or persons, so we can only hope that indeed these people are waiting for that point to see whether the governors are going to loosen their stand, and in the event that they don't loosen, then maybe they're going to come up with an amicable solution as to this, even if it's going for the supplementary budget. But one question then arises as to what really is the ultimate role of these bodies like CRA and the likes of SRC, in the event that they can project some figures that they deem important and necessary for the operations of certain entities. But then again, we proceed to go against that, and even worse, proceed to go against what has been dictated by the courts.
No, it's the National Assembly that is flexing unnecessary muscles, because the CRA is inched in the Constitution, and their role is, of course, advisory, which they have done. They cannot be able to implement whatever advice that they have given. They can only advise Parliament, and Parliament, of course, then is either obligated to take that advice, or they can be able to think otherwise, like they have done now. But really, considering that CRA is a professional body with professionals who've gone through the figures and fully understand what the Constitution says in regards to sharing of revenue, it was only right that the National Assembly take that position. Because I still don't understand why the President is holding on to the view that there is no money, and I don't know why or whether this 15 billion shillings or 20 billion shillings is going to sort all our problems in the national government, and yet the president does not want this money to push to the counties, because it's not really a lot of money. On a budget of 3 trillion, 15 billion is not really a lot of money, or 20 billion. So I still feel that this is something that should have been sorted out a long time ago.
Right.
But people are flexing muscles, and they really want to push the governors so that the governors can be desperate enough to come begging. And I like the stand that the governors have taken to stay away from the issue, because it's none of their issues.
Yeah.
For them, they're supposed to run counties. The national government, through the treasury, is supposed to fund counties. They cannot be able to do much more than that. They just need to wait for the funds. Yes.
While constitutionally, you know, the talks of a referendum or maybe proposed bills or proposed talks on matters a referendum have to sort of go to or find their way to the national, to the assemblies, of course, you know, county assemblies. They have to find their way to the level of the county. The last thing that I would want right now is for the county bosses or maybe the county officers to actively get involved in the talk of a referendum right now, because then so much has not been done at the level of the county. But thanks to this crisis, of course, the governor or maybe the MCs have the MPs have decided that they're not going to cut recess, and even now worse, the governors have decided that they're now going to start talking matters referendum. They'll start talking about the BBL, they start talking about the Punguza Mizigo, and this is the biggest threat that they've put on table, that aside from saying that we're going to stall the activities at the level of the county, now we want to address the question of a referendum where we're going to find a referendum that is going to be good enough to address the question of devolution. Do we then say that the current constitution as it is does not address the best interest of devolution, knowing very well that, of course, it came along with it?
No, the constitution as it is addresses the issue of devolution. And that is why it has worked for the last 6 years or so. The problem that we have as a country is political problems, where we've never settled, even before the constitution, we've never settled politically on how we can be able to live together. And that is why the clamor for changes of the constitution comes all the time. Remember, the issues that we have in BBI and the Punguza Mzigo have nothing to do with devolution.
Right.
It is actually about how people share seats and issues of governance. So devolution still remains the way it is, although people are trying to look for a way of reducing the number of counties and all those things. Those, I really don't think that that is the kind of discussion that we should be working now. Because the biggest problem we have as a country is not the number of devolved units we have, it's the issue of corruption and bad governance. If we can have a new constitution that can be able to fully address those issues, then we'll have gone ahead as a country and we'll be able to develop. And the governors have a right to talk about devolution, to talk about Punguza Muzigo and BBI, because remember, they are politicians and these things will be affecting them. Remember, some of them are two-term governors, they're doing their last term, and they still have political interest. But the kind of push that the National Assembly is having right now on devolution probably is trying to push the county assemblies so that they can either be able to reject or approve the Punguza Mzigo. Right. Because they are becoming agitated every day that, look, we are not even getting the money.
Right.
Let's proceed and approve the Punguza Mzigo so that we can see whether that can be able to address the issues we have. But public participation has to be very key, because we don't want to end up in a referendum that we don't fully understand as Kenyans. We want to be able to understand that we want to change this clause to this, and this is the reason why. That is why we really need to do a lot of public participation. And it's the issues that people have been raising about Punguza Mizigo that we never did the kind of public participation that will have ensured that Kenyans fully understand the ideas or the reasoning behind the push for the change of constitution.
Amid that push and amid the differences that we witnessed today, and even the lobbying that is ongoing to ensure that more resources are sent to the level of the counties, one then would argue, economically, you know, what will be the wisdom if at all the governors, or maybe what would be the essence of having this wisdom of governors just taking the little that is there right now as they continue bargaining, as they continue with this kind of talks? Because when we talk about a situation whereby we've seen, you know, operations stalled up at that level of the county, one would think that maybe it's hypocrisy, one would think that maybe they're not genuine, because if at all they have reached that point of no return, why not get the little, then proceed as, of course, they continue to debate for this?
There is a very high risk of backing off.
Okay.
When you've decided to, it's like a military advancing. You're closer to defeating the enemy.
Right.
Then someone is saying now, because we can't go beyond, let's retreat. That retreat can be very dangerous. And the governors realize that since they have managed to push this to where it is now, the matter is even at the Supreme Court. If they retreat and say, fine, let's take this amount, people will not take them seriously in the future. We will, as Kenyans, will end up believing that these governors were not actually pushing for a high amount for the interest of the Kenyans.
Yeah.
The interest was to have more money probably to eat.
Okay.
So that is why the push has to continue. And at the end of the day, it's not the governors who are suffering. It is the Kenyans. It is the employees who work in the counties.
Right.
It is the projects that have been initiated by the county governments that help our villages that will suffer.
Yeah.
And most of them have stalled now because there's no money, especially for the last 1 year or so. So let's not look at it as the governors suffering. A governor is just one individual. There are thousands and thousands of employees who are working in the county governments, county assemblies, and there's thousands of projects that have been initiated by the county governments that will actually will suffer if we continue having the kind of grandstanding that we have currently. Yes.
We're staring, okay, well, as it is, the situation is bad. But then again, we are staring at even a worse situation ahead if, of course, the governors are to make good their threat of saying that they're going to shut down activities at the level of the county completely come the 16th in the event that this has not been addressed. I mean, what would be your advice to, of course, the government and generally, in as much as maybe we say, yes, address this, I mean, what is the last thing that we should put, or maybe the last foot that we should put on ground towards ensuring that we do not reach this point? Because then it can be a one-day affair, but the repercussions are things that we will not be able to revive.
I'm still waiting for a meeting between the president, the deputy president, the CS Treasury, and the head of the governors, that is Oparanya, or some of the governors, to discuss this issue, because this has never happened.
Yeah. The
issues are still being discussed at Senate level and at National Assembly level. And I believe right now where we are, it is actually beyond the legislature. It is something that the executive has to address. And until that happens, then we will not be seeing the seriousness on the side of the national government in addressing these issues. So the president has to come out so that he can be able to reach out without the kind of threats that he normally issues, to reach out to the governors so that he can hear their grievances and then see how he can be able to handle these issues. Because the same way he issues executive orders, this is something that probably needs an executive order. And Parliament, I know, will be able to abide by the wishes of the president. So he needs to come out and talk about it so that Kenyans can be able to know that he truly is a man who supports devolution. He wants our villages to develop, and he wants to ensure that more money goes to the counties. Because this is one of the promises that he has been making in his campaign, in his campaigns, and he has to live up to that. Yes.
Would we say then that the National Assembly is hypocritical in how they are addressing this? Because they equally indicated that they will not break from their long holiday or month-long holiday just to come out here and address the stalemate. Is it then something that they would say that they've already decided equally, much as maybe the governors have equally decided that, you know, this is the direction it's taking, and them too? So maybe we should seek other ways of addressing this, apart from, of course, thinking about the president that you've, said.
It's a complete breakdown of how the structures work.
Yeah.
And the National Assembly is flexing its muscles because nobody is giving them directions. The president has been quiet. The deputy president has also been quiet, although he talked about it in Nakuru the other day, but they have not given that kind of push that you will expect. Because when some matters are coming up for discussion in Parliament, you will hear of parliamentary group meetings where these issues are discussed. You will hear of Kamkunjis where these issues have been discussed. But to the MPs, this is nothing, and it actually does not involve them because it's the counties anyway, and that is the work of the Senate. The Senate has done their job. They have already passed the bill, and they are only waiting for the National Assembly to pass. So our MPs have never really focused on devolution. Their interest currently is on the campaigns, most of them. You will either find them campaigning for BBI or against BBI, or campaigning for one candidate for 2022. That's why they want the long break. But the interest of the Kenyans is what they don't have at heart. And that's where we are, Yes. All
right. Lastly on that one, an advice from Homa Bay Town Member of Parliament, that is Peter Kaluma, who's equally a member of the Justice Legal Affairs Committee. And he says, or maybe called upon the governors who sort of felt like maybe they were not able to run activities at the county as it was due to the stalemate that we're witnessing today. So he tells them or advises them to, sort of write to the controller of budget to release about 15% of the amount of money or the national revenue to manage operations in the devolved units as they get to address this. Is it equally something that would sort of paint a picture of retreat?
No, I think that cannot work because Treasury was mulling with the release of 50% of the allocation
Yes.
as they wait for the issue to be addressed. And what Treasury did is they wrote to the Attorney General, who later advised them that any money that will be released from the consolidated fund has to be backed up by law. And this law is the Division of Revenue Bill. So even if they issue 1 shilling from the consolidated fund, that will be legal because there is no law that is backing up that release. So the control of budget will not approve that, considering that the Attorney General has come out and spoken about it and has strongly said it cannot happen. That is why the money, actually, we probably didn't need what Peter Kaluma is talking because Treasury was willing to release the money. But the Attorney General told them, hold your horses, let's complete the process first and have a law that can be able to assist you make the transfer. Otherwise, you will go to court and you will go to jail for releasing money without a backing of the law. So I don't think that can really work at the moment.
All right. So, of course, we wait to see what will be done as to this particular stalemate, even as issues or maybe